We're looking at the book of Numbers and chapter 13. I was only thinking, we can't get away as individuals from being associated with numbers. You have got a birth date, you've got a national insurance number, you've got an NHS number, you've got a works number if you're in work, you've got a phone or phone numbers, you are numbered in the population of this country. You may have a number of in a society or a club in which you work. You've got a number associated with your payroll or with your pay. You are paid, calculated in numbers. We cannot get away from numbers, can we? The one thing I was thinking this afternoon came to me was this. God doesn't think of you or me as a number. That was the accusation when I first worked in the factories when I left school. You're just a number. They don't care about you. You're just one of many, and you're just a number on the payroll. But you know, God never says your number is written down in heaven. What does he say? Your names are written. God means you mean far more to God than a mere number. So there's a thought, thinking through numbers. You rack your brains to think how many numbers are associated with you. You might be surprised. I might be surprised. But here we are, the book of Numbers, which is about the journeyings of Israel after they left Egypt on their way to the promised land, and it's about those journeys between Egypt and the promised land and the events that happened on that journey. So we're going to look at Numbers 13. Numbers 13, and I'll read the passage to us. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them." So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. Now these were their names. From the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, the son of Zachor. From the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, the son of Hori. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Issachar, Igal, the son of Joseph. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, the son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gadil, the son of Sodi. From the tribe of Joseph, that is, from the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, the son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, the son of Gemalai. From the tribe of Asher, Sethor, the son of Michael. From the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, the son of Voshvi. From the tribe of Gad, Guel, the son of Michael. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. Then Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said to them, "Go up this way into the south, and go to the mountains, and see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds, whether the land is rich or poor, whether there are forests there or not. Be of good courage. Bring some of the fruit of the land." Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up from the south and came to Hebron, Ahiman, Shishai and Talmi, the descendants of Anak, were there. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and there they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. They carried it between two of them on a pole. They also brought some of the pomegranates and figs. The place was the valley of Eshcol, because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down there. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Then they told him and said, "We went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan." Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature." There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak, came from the giants. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so were we in their sight. Amen. I don't know if you've ever heard of this term, this word, this title. Operation Mincemeat. That's it. Operation Mincemeat is a true story. And they made a film about it. Jonathan seems to know it. Now, it's a story from the Second World War. And scenes we're looking at spies and surveillance and other things going on. The theme that is there of what I'm going to talk about here. Behind the well-known battles and campaigns of the Second World War lies a secret history. Covert operations and deception plans aimed to confuse the enemy at every opportunity. Operation Mincemeat was a deception conceived by British intelligence to fool the Germans regarding the true target for the Allied invasion of Sicily. A dead body would be planted off the coasts of Spain carrying secret documents which purported to reveal that the targets for the forthcoming invasion would be Greece and Sardinia, with Sicily only intended as a feint or a diversion. To ensure that the Germans swallowed the deception, it was necessary to create a detailed false identity for the body, which was that of a homeless labourer who had died after swallowing rat poison. The secret mission involved dressing this corpse as a major in the Royal Marines and giving it the false identity of William Martin. Appropriate identification documents and other papers would give the body a personality and a background. These included a photograph of Major Martin's fiancée, a receipt for an engagement ring, a theatre ticket stub, and other evidence. Early on the 30th of April 1943, the body of Major Martin was launched into the sea from the British submarine HMS Seraph and left to drift just over a mile off the southern Spanish coast. Once recovered by the Spanish authorities, the secret documents carried on the body were covertly opened, photographed and passed via Nazi sympathisers to German intelligence officers in Spain. So there's the bait. The Germans acted swiftly on the false information by doubling the number of troops sent to Sardinia, while many additional German divisions were also transferred to Greece and the Balkans. The Allied invasion of Sicily was launched on July 9, 1943, and as intended, provided a huge surprise to the German defenders. In just over a month, the island was fully captured by the Allies, and the lack of enemy reinforcements had proved to be a deciding factor in the success. Mincemeat had been well and truly swallowed. Now, I can give you the website for this, but there's loads of information regarding this, and even the name of the man who died of rat poison, and they gave him a false identity. But that's a true story from the Second World War, and it's in the area of, or this is in the area of that, if you like. This chapter here is sending spies in. Now, when I left school in the 60s, seems a long time ago, but certainly into the 70s and 80s, there was a period there when in the newspapers there was loads of spy stories. Spies were being found out high up in the British government, spying for Russia. And there was lots of trading of spies because there was that much of it going on. And, you know, there was programs like, what's it, Danger Man with Patrick McGowan. And that was all about spies and espionage. And we were all into that. It wasn't cowboys and Indians. It was into this kind of stuff over here. And spies, there's always spy stories and spy films that have always fascinated people, even through to today. That's where you've got James Bond and all this stuff from. So it's a first, really. It's in the Bible. God sends spies in to spy out the land. And that's what this chapter is mainly about. What really happened here in chapter 13. Now, just an overview. I'll ask Alex to put a breakdown of the chapter up for us so we can just look together. If you want to look at the chapter yourself later on or whatever, I'll go through it now. Scouting Canaan, faith versus fear, because that's what we've got here when we hear the report of the 10 spies. Number 1, exploration of Canaan, verses 1 to 20. Return of the spies in verses 21 to 25. The spies' report, verses 26 to 29. And Caleb's response, verses 30 to 33. So that's what how the chapter breaks up. And just briefly go over those headings. First of all, God instructs, verses 1 to 20, exploration of Canaan. God instructs Moses, as we've looked in the reading, to send 12 leaders from each of the Israelite tribes to explore Canaan, the promised land. Moses sends them from the desert of Paran with the specific instructions to assess the land, verse 17, its people, verse 18, the cities, verse 19, and the soil and the trees, verse 20. Quite a thorough assessment of the land was to be made. Number 2, the return of the spies, verses 21 to 25. The 12 spies scout the land for 40 days. They return carrying a branch with a single cluster of grapes, pomegranates, and figs as proof of the land's fertility. Verse 23, it took 2 men, you may note, to carry the pole on which the cluster of grapes was tied to. So this is really good stuff here. This was a land definitely flowing with milk and honey. And indicates it by the size of these grapes that the fruit there was bigger than usual. The spies report, verses 26 to 29. The spies confirm the land's fruitfulness, but report the presence of powerful people living in large fortified cities, creating a sense of fear among the Israelites. They implied here that God's word is null and void. After all, God had said to them, God had promised them, that's why it's called the Promised Land, to Israel. This is for your possession. But what happened was, the spies came back with a report, 10 spies, which was, oh yeah, it is, as you say, flowing with milk and honey, and all the other things, but, and the book tends to negate what's already just been said, but there's giants there. There's big people there in the way, and it's too dangerous, or we're not going to go in there, basically. So there's the word nevertheless is in there, which is like a but. It's a negative in the sentence, but the giants are in our way. Now then, let's look at the 10 spies. The 10 spies were actually saying in their report back, everything God told you, I'm writing this down, everything God told you about the land was true. Everything that God's told us about the land is true. But he lied when it said it will be ours, because there's no way we can conquer it. That's summing up what they said. So what was the failing here of these spies? They failed, the 10 spies, by the way, they failed to rely on God's supernatural ability, for they reckoned only on their own natural ability to overcome the obstacle in their way. And they thought it can't be done, so they came back with a negative report to the people. The 10 spies were big on attitude. If you think about what they said here, they were big on attitude, haughty, in other words, and arrogant in their report. It can't be done. That was their words, if you like, to Moses and the people. Their commission had been, when you think about it, they went beyond their commission. Their commission had been to carry out reconnaissance on the target and to report back on what they saw. That was what they were commissioned to do. It wasn't their job to determine if the Israelites could overcome the Canaanites. That wasn't their job to do that. Contrast the 10 spies report with Caleb's response. And you can see that in verse 30. Let's look at that for the moment. Then Caleb quieted the people after he'd heard this terrible news about the giants, the sons of the Anak, or the Anakim. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, look what he says, let us go up at once. Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. There's no fear there, is there, in Caleb's response? He saw exactly what the 10 spies saw, the other 10. And yet, Caleb and Joshua, they showed their faith in God in the way in which they reported what they saw. Their response is full of faith, whereas the 10 spies, their response is full of fear. And fear will keep you where you are or even push you back. If you let fear dominate your thinking and your attitude and your actions, you won't move forward in your faith. You'll get stuck. You will be in problems. What faith does, faith is always going forward. Faith is always going forward with the word of God, because it's faith in God. He has Caleb here has a can-do attitude. Yes, there's big problems there, but we can do it. Why? Because of ourselves? No, not because of ourselves. Because we've got a great God, that's why we can do it. That's why we can go in and possess the land. That was Caleb's and Joshua's stance. So we contrast there, there's two different attitudes going on with the 10 spies and the 2. Caleb assured them that they could conquer the land indeed, verse 30. Caleb was a mighty warrior, as we know, and he wasn't bluffing. Nevertheless, the spies refused to listen. The 10 spies. They insisted it was impossible to conquer the land, and they did not withdraw their own opinion. You know, it's something for us to think about as Christians. When something new comes up, or a challenge, there's always two ways to look at it. Now, the way in which the 10 spies looked at it was, oh yeah, there's good stuff there. You know, God has promised a lovely place for us to live in. But the problems are insurmountable before we have to go away and come back maybe. Because we just can't overcome these problems that he's put before us. But Caleb's response was, where's the problem? Caleb's response was, let's go in. God is with us. God is on our side. Who's the real giant here? Is it the Anakim or is it God? We've got a big God in control. We've got a big God who loves us, who saves us, and who directs us in our life and our walk with him when we trust in him. So we have to show faith, not fear, in the circumstances in which we're in, because those things our response will determine how far we go with God in our faith. Now, Caleb's response, as I've said, you know, you can look at it this way. The 10 spies were remainers. But the 2, Caleb and Joshua, they were the Brexiteers, but not really. They're more correctly the Canaaniteers. They said, let's go into Canaan. That was their position. Who are you with? Are you with the Remainers? Or are you with the Canaaniteers? Caleb encouraged them, verse 30. He encouraged the people to conquer the land. And Caleb, you know, as I've said, Caleb was a mighty warrior. He was prepared to fight in the battle of faith. Nevertheless, the spies refused to listen. They insisted it was impossible to conquer the land. They did not withdraw their opinion, verse 31. While 10 of the spies focused on the intimidating aspect of the inhabitants, Caleb and Joshua encouraged the people to possess the land. He tells them, let us go at once. Let us go now. We've got everything that we need to conquer the land. That was Caleb's position, and Joshua, let us go now. There's nothing to stop us from going in now. The giants are in there, the obstacles are in there, but with God we can overcome all these obstacles. Don't forget, this was the promised land. This was promised to who? Not to the Canaanites. It was promised to Israel to go in and possess it. The 10 spies gave a bad report here to Moses and the people. Bad because of the giants, the son of the Anakim. And these men had been lost my place here, sorry. These men had become frightened of the size of the opposition, if you like, and said, well, it's impossible. We can't go ahead with this mission. It's no good. We have to pull back, regroup, and see what we can do. But God had told them to go in and spy out the land firstly. And then they'd make a decision from there. Now, what happens is, Caleb, when we go back to what these spies had seen before, what the people of Israel had experienced with God, why wouldn't they believe that they could take the land? Because let's face it, in Egypt, they saw God plague Egypt with 10 plagues, 10 supernatural judgments upon the land. And eventually the 10th one, the plague of death, the firstborn, was the one that Pharaoh wilted on and let the people go. But they actually saw what God's control and power of creation there in their own eyes. And then when they came out of Egypt, Pharaoh regathers his men, comes up behind them to capture them and take them back. What does God do? He opens the Red Sea. He opens the Red Sea and he pushes and separates the waters from the waters. And he puts 2 walls of water there, standing up. And he blows a wind on the base, on the seabed, if you like, and dries it up. And Israel, with 1.5, roughly to 2.5 million people, goes through that gap in the Red Sea. And they get to the other side, and Pharaoh comes in and says, I've got them now. And God brings the waters back. And those waters were a means of them, Israel escaping, if you like. Well, those waters were the waters of judgments that fell on Pharaoh and his army, and he died in the Red Sea. Those people who were in this incident here saw those things. And when they came out, remember, now we looked at the book of Numbers. It's a book where the people of God are complaining and moaning and rebelling constantly, right up to this point here. They complained about the food. God sent them manna from heaven every day to feed them in the wilderness. And nothing grows in the wilderness. But God was bringing them to the place where he wanted them to be. He provided them with the manna, and then he provided them with meat, quails, well, birds landing every day in the desert. And they killed the birds and they had meat. They saw God's hand right through their time, from the time when Moses called them out, right through to the very point where they are now. And yet they did not believe. They would not believe. They rather gave way to fear of the giants than go in faith. And you know that generation, we read in this book here, that generation, with the exception of Caleb and Joshua, they all died in the wilderness. They all died. It was only their children that were born to them. And born in the wilderness. They went in. That's why there's 2 censuses in the book of Numbers. The second census numbers the people again. And it is that generation that went into the promised land. This first generation, because they were a people who were stiff-necked, proud, arrogant, complaining, moaning, fighting against themselves, in a sense, fighting against God with their attitude. God said, this people will not go in to my land, not go into the promised land. Now then, what are the lessons here from this passage for us this evening? I think the real lesson is here, you've got to learn, we have to learn, every one of us, how to overcome our fears as Christians. Because fear is, when you think people out in the world, and maybe in the church as well, they have all kinds of fears in life. People can fear ants, flies, bugs, butterflies, dogs, cats. People have so many fears of things today. And you would think, well, how can they be fearful of those things? But that's how strong fear can be. And we've got to come to a place where we're trying to overcome our fears. And one of the good things to do, and I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, is to ask yourself, whatever it might be, why am I afraid of this thing? Why is this affecting me in the way it does? And so you've got to rationalise, you've got to ask the question, why is it I have this problem? Because fear will dominate us if we're not careful. Fear will control us, and fear will hold us back from truly following God. Remember, these people who showed the fear, they all died in the wilderness eventually. But Caleb and Joshua, they went into the promised land. These are the people of faith. And faith, we have a faith that can overcome every fear. Even though sometimes we can be greatly tested by serious fears in our lives. We have a faith that is an overcoming faith. And faith in God will help us to overcome those problems that we face. I wouldn't belittle some things, some fears. That's the kind of world we're in. We live in a sinful world where lots of things are wrong, lots of things are bad. And we've got to try and maintain our close walk with God and to live a life of faith, learn from the battles that we have and the warfare that we're engaged in as Christians, and overcome our faith with God's help. We are overcomers. So there's lessons here to learn about fear and faith. There's a positivity about faith, isn't there? And that's a good thing. And we shouldn't fear. We shouldn't fear change when we first hear about changes. It's a natural thing to do, especially when you get older. You want to change something, you want to do something different. Well, oh no, don't believe in that. No, that's no good. And we think of all the reasons why that particular thing shouldn't happen. But we won't go anywhere if we adopt that attitude to every change proposed at every situation where we've possibly got to change something. We've got to have a faith attitude to the things in church life, to our walk with God in the world in which we live. So those who were fearful, they went backwards. They wouldn't listen to Caleb's counsel. Let's go in now. Let's go and do it. And so they were set apart in some sense, naturally, from Caleb and Joshua. I've got a text, not a text, a quote. Alex is going to put that up, I hope. I did. Okay. Right then, I'll read it to you then. God is kind. Someone said this, there's no name to it. God is kind and understanding towards our weaknesses. But it requires us to go forward in faith. And the Bible is clear that faith does not mature and strengthen without, I'm looking for one word. I'll read it again so you get it. God is kind and understanding towards our weaknesses, but it requires us to go forward in faith. And the Bible is clear that faith does not mature and strengthen without, thank you, trials. Trials. So often, like these men, when a problem comes, God has allowed it to happen because he's testing us. He's testing our faith. But again, it's how we look at it. It's how we look at the problem. Now, these men looked at the problem, so there's giants there. We can't overcome those giants. That was a wrong assessment, by the way. But that's what they did. But you know, often people think when they get trials, which are designed to take us forward in our faith, they often think God is against me. God doesn't like me. God hates me because of these trials, these problems, whatever they may be. But without trials and problems and difficulties, our faith would not grow. It won't grow because these are the things that God has designed to come into our life. And he wants you and me to handle these things in faith. Accept them, that are given by God. Handle them in a faith outlook, if you like. And not be defeated by the trial, not be defeated by the problem that we face. Go forward in faith, like Caleb and Joshua. So that's all I've got to say this evening on this passage. I could have said a lot more, but time was against me. But it's a great passage for us to read ourselves and learn from. And the battle of fear and faith will continue until we're with the Lord. But if we're going to be overcomers, if we're going to be living a life of faith, then we've got to take these things in a faith way. We've got to apply our faith to these things and not be defeated by obstacles or circumstances that come to us. So there we are. We're going to sing a hymn. Fight the good